Hey, med school, is it as hard as everyone says? Or do they say it's hard? That's a question I always wondered about before getting into medical school. And the answer is it's mixed. Now, if you search this up on YouTube, I took a look at some of the videos. They say that med school isn't hard. It's just a lot of information that you're gathering, and that's not wrong. In pre-clerkship, that is. A lot of medical school and pre-clerkship, which is the first 2 years before you get into the clinical scenarios and the clinical rotations, is true. Yeah, it's not difficult in the sense of the information. I would for 100% sure say that any advanced mathematics course in your undergraduate studies, or any advanced linear algebra or any other STEM course that actually requires lots of analytical thinking is much harder than any pre-clerkship medicine that you would ever do, because this is just all memorization and there's a bit of understanding, a bit of connecting things, but other than that, it's not difficult from that perspective. The volume of the information is high, but you get a hang of it. It's called the fire hose analogy. There's a fire hose and you have to keep drinking from it, and if you don't, you'll drown basically. It's pretty morbid, but that usually doesn't happen. Don't have to worry about that. The thing is though, it's not that pre-clerkship material that's hard. It's not. It's when you get to the clerkship setting and when you're preparing for it that makes it difficult. And I'll explain why. It's not just studying at that point. When you get to clerkship, there's so many different factors that are into play that really makes it stressful. Number one, you're still studying and making sure that you're studying for your board examination, and these are the examinations that occur at the end of each rotation. So you might have a rotation of internal medicine, and that has an exam, or you might have a pediatrics, and that has an exam. So you always have exams to look forward to, which is always a blessing, isn't it? And the second thing is, this is pretty much a job now. When you go into clerkship, you're working 8-hour days, and you're basically helping out the team in whatever way that you can as a medical student. And depending on the rotation, it might not be much, but you're still there, you're experiencing things, and that's all that matters. But it's a job, and you have to study afterwards, and that makes it very tiring. It's very stressful as well, because you're always in these new settings. You're going from place to place to place to new preceptors, and you're always shifting from one place to another. As soon as you get comfortable with one place, you're thrown into another setting. You get comfortable with another preceptor, you're thrown into another setting. It's like they really don't want you to get stuck with just one person. And that has its ups and downs, because if someone's not the best, you can always switch around. But that makes it stressful, and that makes the switching often very difficult. And that's just the third thing that's difficult about clerkship. But number 4, there's this whole hidden curriculum, we like to call it, behind the clerkship and medical rotations, because what happens is that your evaluations are dependent on the preceptor that you have. So you have to be very careful about what you say, don't you not? And so, yeah, depending on the personalities that you clash with, you've got this other thing that you have to deal with aside from just studying and making sure that you're doing your best to match with someone who you can get a good evaluation from. And often expectations from specific preceptors differ from one place to another. So you might not be able to match those expectations, and when you do talk to them, you might not be on the same wavelength. And that's a very important note to note as well. And on top of all of this, so I've mentioned a lot of things, but on top of all of this, you have to still pick a specialty that you are really interested in. And that's a very difficult task in and of itself. But not only that, you also have to get letters of recommendation, and you have to balance your life as well. You can't just be studying all day, or you'll just get burnt out. You can't be doing rotations all day, or you'll get burnt out. So my point is that yes, pre-clerkship is easy, right? From the sense that all you have to do is study. And that's beautiful when you look back on it, right? You just go to your lecture and then you study however way you want and then you go from there. But then you get into clerkship and you get all of those things that I mentioned, and it makes medical school quite difficult. And on top of all of that, you have to master the integration of all of the knowledge that you've learned and applying evidence-based medicine, which is using evidence from the most recent guidelines on how to treat a specific disease and go from there. So really, from where it was pre-clerkship, where it was just memorizing raw information and kind of connecting it, you get into this habit of really working your mind, getting in that clinical mindset, and going from there. So the point of this is I don't like, I want people to be informed about what medical school can really be like, because it's not all sunshines and rainbows. Well, for pre-clerkship it might be, but again, even that is dependent on the school that you go to. In Canada, we have it pretty good because it's usually pass or fail, but in the States, they have to study for their STEP examinations as well and their USMLE examinations. So that's a whole nother stress that thankfully we don't have, but just adds on top now. Isn't medical school just great? Anyways, don't let that discourage you though. Hopefully, if you're a pre-med watching this, you'll get in and you can experience it for yourself. And if you're just someone checking out how hard medical school is, I hope you learned something. But with that, I will see you in the next video.